As one of my favorite personalities used to say,
we don't make mistakes, we have happy accidents.
this is kind of my happy accident. This standard hydrangea here, you guys, was a mistake. Let me give you a little bit of the history, how this started last year. Last year in 2020, I was ready early in the spring to prune my hydrangea hedge here on the back. And as I normally do in the spring to keep them nice and short, I go really heavy with the pruning. I cut all of the growth that happened the year before, and I just leave a couple of nice strong branches. Well, I ended up having a lot of branches, a lot of cuttings that were 4 or 5 feet tall, and I decided to make a trellis in a container to use with my sugar snap peas. I figured instead of having to trash those, I was just going to use them and save some money. What I didn't anticipate was that as soon as I put those cuttings that were about 1 or 2 weeks old, fresh in the soil, they started to root. Most of my cuttings, most of the branches that were there, they started showing new growth, new leaves, and I just kept on ripping those from the branches because I really didn't want anything growing there other than the sugar snap peas. And honestly, I think that's why I kind of had some disappointing results with the sugar snap peas, because all of the cuttings were rooting underneath there. There was a lot of fight going there with for the nutrients. Again, I only wanted these branches to be the trellis for my sugar snap peas. So towards the end of the season, I decided I am going to leave one of those cuttings in that container. I'm not even going to place it. I'm not even going to move it because it had all of 2020 to develop some roots, and I was not going to mess up with that. So I decided I'm going to let it sit there throughout the winter in that container outside, unprotected, just forgot about it. And if it comes back next year, then maybe I'll try to do something. The following spring, 2021, it started showing new growth on every piece of the branches where it wanted to grow. It started developing some leaves, and I decided to cut that in half because the branch was really tall. Remember, I'm talking about 4 or 5 feet tall. So I cut that branch in half, mainly because I know that that branch is going to grow. Remember, it's just one single stem. It's just going to grow nice and thick. So instead of leaving it 4 or 5 feet tall from the beginning, I just wanted to keep it short so it has time to grow each year and get stronger and thicker so that it can hold all of the weight of the top blooming pieces. So obviously, this is a standard hydrangea style, basically like a tree form, and look at that, I got blooms the first year. It's amazing, it's doing well. It's lacking some sort of nutrients, and that's totally understandable because I didn't change the soil in this container. This container is from last year. I only added a little bit of potting mix on the top, and I gave it a little bit of plant tone, nothing extreme. So I know that this year I'm gonna have to dig these plants and put it in fresh soil so that it does better next year. And as you can tell, it's kind of on the side of the container because again, this was a trellis. This was nothing that it was going to be holding there in the middle. So it's just it's looking weird here in this container. The only thing that I make sure when I was ready to trim this, if you notice here, this branch, it has a few knots here. They go around, and normally this is in the beginning of the spring. This will be where the new growth happens, and then you have the blooms on the sides. So there's this space and there's space. So I make sure to make a cut right above one of the nodes so that I won't be cutting here weirdly or right here in the beginning. I make sure to go right over here in the middle of it so that the plant will naturally shoot this way, and then I will start going with the top heavy blooms. Here and there, I will see new growth happen here and there where the other buds are, and I will just come here and rip those off carefully. And you can tell it's already growing into a nice thick branch, and the whole container has roots going everywhere. So I know that this thing is established. So I might have to find, when I'm ready here this season to replace it in another container, I might just have to find a container that is as big or slightly bigger than this, and then I will just have to center this somehow. But as you can tell, here is where I make my cut, and then the branches start going this way. So next year in the spring, to give it a little bit more of bulk on the top, what I'm going to do is that on these branches right here, I am going to come here and then I'm going to make cuts right over here, right above each nod or buds forming, so that the shoots will happen this way. And right now I have about 4 or 5 branches coming from the top, and that's perfect. But then hopefully next year that amount double, and I have more blooms and more of a round form. I hope that makes sense. I absolutely love this, you guys. I mean, look how easy this is. I mean, I started from last year, so it does take a little bit of patience. But if I can just put it on the side and give it some time and water when it needs it, then it's totally fine. So what I'm going to do today, because I had such a great success with this accidentally, I am going to start a few cuttings today, the first week in August, from the hydrangeas back there. I'm going to take some blooms, some pieces, I'm going to put some in water, and then I'm going to put some in soil in smaller containers. And then we'll see how they do. It might be either too late or too early to start doing those. I have no idea, but I'm happy to try it and we'll see. I know that having this in a huge container, maybe in the front of the house or on the back by the patio, it will be lovely. And honestly, I have been wanting one of these standard hydrangeas for the longest times, but every time I see them at the store, they're a little bit out of my budget. I mean, they're a little bit pricey, and I understand that. I understand that it takes a lot of time for them to develop into this or into something really big and tall. So I'm just going to try it. I'm going to experiment with them, and I don't have anything to lose other than some time and some potting mix. So let me start with that. All right, so this is what I'm going to do. I cut a few of the blooms, all right? And what I'm going to do is that I read somewhere that new growth, younger growth is easier to root than the older growth. I don't know if you notice here. See, hopefully you can see this. I don't know if you notice here the color of the stem. This is the older growth and this is the newer growth. So this is the younger part. So in theory, from what I read, do not quote me on this, is that this part should be easier to root than this, because this is just older and this is still growing, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is that I am going to be cutting the blooms right over here. I'm going to save these guys because I can do something with them. So I am going to use this and stick it in water or in soil. And I have a few containers there where I'm going to put 2 or 3 pieces in there, and hopefully a few of them root. I mean, if half of them root, then that's really more than what I need. But it's a fun thing to do. I don't know, we'll see how it does. And some of the other pieces that I'm going to be doing, they're going to be a bit smaller. So instead of going all the way from here, I'm going to cut a little bit here, and hopefully I'll give it more chance. I don't know. Like I said, I'm new to this. I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm just testing, experimenting, and hopefully give you an update if they all fail or if they all took here in a few months. I have nothing special going on here. This is just regular potting soil that I have, and this is just regular tap water. So I am just going to be doing this, and that's really it. I am going to leave a couple in each little cup, and then I'm going to put a bunch of them here. We'll see which ones do better. That way I can just update you and say, you know, the water technique does better than this or the other way around. So I have a lot to do, cutting some blooms and putting some branches in here. All right, so for some of them, I'm just going to do just a stick. And then for others, I decided to try and leave a couple of leaves. I don't know if it makes like a huge difference. So wish me luck, and until the next video, you guys, hopefully I can give you an update here in a few months. We'll see.